at the outset means I again, I'm in a very personal observation. I want to say how thankful I am to Saji Narayan ji that he has accepted, because I have personally derived a lot of intellectual strength and a lot of intellectual inspiration from my interactions with him. So I would like to request him to speak on the failure of communism in India and enlighten us, and to really give us a direction on how we need to look towards the present and the future vis-a-vis this very peculiar ideology or this very peculiar system which keeps moving around amidst us. Sri Saji Narayan ji.
Thank you, Dr. Anirban. Thank you for inviting me. And I should compliment you as well as the foundation for taking up a subject which needs to be discussed in the context of the communist response to the Chinese aggression taking place in the borders. Now, when we discuss this topic, we should understand that communism was an ideology that has catch up the imagination of the global youth in the whole world during the beginning of last century. It went up for about half a century. Many of its slogans were catching for the entire world. In spite of all this fashion-like spread of communism in the beginning of the last century, what happened to it? How did it fail? This is very important when we discuss the contemporary issues in India. Now, 2018-19 was historically very important for all the communists in the entire world, because that coincided with the 100th year of October Revolution. It coincided with the 150th year of Das Kapital, the Bible of Communists, and it also coincided with the 200th year of Karl Marx. But we didn't find any celebration in the communist camps. Why? Because ideologically communism is dead now. In Kerala also, we don't find any ideological challenge from the side of the communists. Now the challenge is mainly strategic and propaganda level. A propaganda battle, strategic battle is taking place on the side of left. Now, why communism failed? Only a little background I would like to say. Now, 1990 was the dividing line. Before that, there was perestroika and glasnost. And after that, when the Iron Curtain in Russia was raised, we all understood how a communist heaven looks like. In Poland, there was the leading trade union Solidarity conducted a nationwide strike, not for bonus or gratuity, but for bread for twice a day. That was their main demand. So as a wave, it started from many East European countries, then Russia. Most of the communist countries were affected. And finally, the communism collapsed throughout the world. And that was the way in which communism has vanished from the face of the earth. Now in India, if you look at communist history, just mentioning certain things. Informally, communism was formed in Tashkent in 1920. But formally, it was founded in Kanpur in 1925. The year 1925 is very important because on the same year, another organization, the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, was formed in Nagpur. It's a matter for study, the history of these two organizations, comparative study. Now, Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh extends its roots to every nook and corner of this country and every sector of human activity. All the social activities are now related to RSS. The Chinese intellectuals are studying what is RSS. Even the Pakistan media are discussing. Every day we are hearing about this. And even the UK, many countries, they are all conducting researches on how RSS could make such a advance. And where does this communist party lies? It is confined to only one state, that is Kerala. Now, when Communist Party came to power in Kerala in 1965 through ballot, at that time, the many media all over, not only in India, but all over the world said. Now we have an answer. After Nehru, whom? It is EMS Namboodiripad. That's what many people said. But now we find Communist Party or EMS or nobody is there in the scene. So what happened to it? Now when we are discussing the issue of failure of communism in India, I remember in 1970s there was a discussion on why communism failed in India in the Kerala University. And they invited the most appropriate person to talk about it. It was EMS Namboodiripad. He was asked that question, why communism has failed in India? Because it is only confined to certain pockets, even at that time. Then EMS said there are two factors. One is India did not develop an Indian communism with its roots in ethos and tradition. That was one thing. Secondly, he said that they did not recognize the political personality of Mahatma Gandhi, because Mahatma Gandhi was still reigning supreme in the minds of average Indian as the best ideal political personality that could not be blasted by the communist propaganda. These are the two observations made by these people. But there is another thing. Throughout the history, the Communist Party looked to Russia, because the world communism was unicentric till about 1954. It was Moscow was the headquarters of world communism. But when Mao came to power in China, then it became bicentric. Peking also became another center of communism. Thereafter, what happened? The world communism saw nationalism rising up in every communist country. So in Vietnam, you will find Ho Chi Minh had created a Vietnamese communism. Similarly, in most of the countries, they had national communism. So everywhere nationalism, patriotism superseded communism or communist internationalism. This happened. But there was only one place where it didn't happen. That was in India. Here, everybody looked to Russia or China as their source of inspiration. Because of that, there was a strategic and political failures on their part. In 1939, when Stalin had an alliance with Hitler, communists were vehemently opposing the British government. But in 1941, when Hitler suddenly attacked Russia, then they changed. They worked hand in hand with the British government and they tried to torpedo the 1942 Quit India movement that we all know. In the same way, during the partition time, they supported partition, they supported Pakistan formation. Similarly, during the 1962 war, they supported China. And the communist leaders, in their biography, they say that the Communist Party directed all this cadre not to give blood to the Indian soldiers fighting in the Chinese border. That was there. For that charge alone, many of them were put to jail. Similarly, the Russian ambassador later wrote, he said, EMS Namboodiripad has gone to the Russian embassy and talked to the Russian ambassador that they should not condemn the Chinese aggression on the border. That request was there. But after 62, there was a sharp division in the Communist Party. And those supporting Russian national imperialism, they formed CPI. And those who are supporting the Chinese national imperialism, they became CPM. Now, in the same way, there was another stream also, that is the Naxal movement. Naxal movement is also very important in our discussion because in the tribal area, they are creating a lot of issues. So, how Naxal movement also has started? In the West, there was one person who believed in violence and who tried to study RSS. And he said RSS doesn't have that much radical Hinduism. So he joined Hindu Mahasabha. He was Nasuram Godse. In the same way, on the eastern India, in Bengal, there was another person who wanted to study RSS, who had debates, discussions, discourses with our Sangha RSS Karyakartas and our workers in Bengal side, he used to talk to on many things regarding Sangha. He formed the Naxalbari movement, that was Charu Majumdar. Then when you look at to communist rule in West Bengal, Jyoti Basu came to power in 1977. And after his government never celebrated Independence Day till 1990. And only in 1990, he hoisted Indian flag during the Independence Day in the Writers Building in Calcutta. Similarly, the communist parties in India, they did not hoist national flag in their offices. That first time it was done on the Republic Day of 2017. Just 3 years back, the first time national flag was hoisted in the Communist Party office. So these are the way in which they have betrayed, they are cheated. These treacherous people have behaved to Indian nationalism. Still, it's an amazing thing that Indian democracy tolerates these people. We are so tolerant to these people. Now, when we look at the contemporary issues, on every issue related to China, the CPM had stood along with the Chinese people. When Dalai Lama visited Arunachal Pradesh along with a central minister, then China opposed it. Along with China, there was a party in India, that is CPM, to oppose the same thing. Similarly, they wanted plebiscite in Kashmir. Every time they were arguing for plebiscite in Kashmir. But on a fine morning, our Modi government, they removed Article 370. They divided Jammu and Kashmir into 3 union territories. Nothing happened. So that is also a political failure for these people. Similarly, in JNU, they stood with Kashmiri terrorists, and even in Delhi Press Club, these people supporting some elements, they conducted a seminar in support of Kashmiri terrorists. To that extent, they are doing all these things. In Kerala also, they took political advantage on 2 issues. One is they formed a Muslim Jilla Malappuram, and later the Congress also identified this as a minority appeasement. And when Saddam Hussein was executed by America, Congress as well as the CPM, they committed each other to declare Hartal in Kerala, as if Saddam Hussein is a great religious leader of this community. So in the same way, they tried to attack Hindutva in the Sabarimala issue, but they failed in the next election. Realized the heat that was there. That was the way in which they are doing. Now, looking at their developmental aspects also, it's also worth saying, because I have mentioned the Poland issue. After the Iron Curtain is raised, many of the communist countries were in a pathetic situation. The East Germany, ruled by communist regime, they are one of the most backward area in that Europe. And West Germany was, which was by non-communist people, they are much advanced. So this difference after the partition we have seen in Germany. Similarly, same thing happened in India also. So after the beginning of this millennium, the development aspect of Indian states have come up. And there, Gujarat, led by Narendra Modi, came first in development, whereas West Bengal, which was ruled by Communist Party for the last 30 years, they came on 22nd position. So during the 30 years, what they were doing for the development of the common man, that needs to be discussed in detail. Further, they also, in the developmental aspect, they did not look to their ideology. In 2008, Buddhadev openly said, we embrace capitalism because without industrialization, we cannot progress. So we embrace capitalism. And Jyoti Basu also supported. But ideologically, they are dead. A political party also, they could not catch up the imagination of Indian people. But on one front, they are still succeeding. That is on the propaganda battle. When you look at many of their issues, they have performed very badly but they will accuse the same thing against others. For example, they accuse everywhere in all forums that RSS is Gandhi murderers. But we should understand that Nirmal Chandra Chatterjee, who was the Hindu Mahasabha during the murder of Mahatma Gandhi, that Nirmal Chandra Chatterjee was later became an MP of Communist Party. Why did they make him an MP? This is a question that they have to answer. Still, they will say RSS is Gandhi murderers. Similarly, during emergency, the CPI joined with Indira Gandhi in that autocratic regime. Still, they talk about very much about democracy and other principles. Similarly, they attack this government as a corporate people. They are supporting, the government is supporting corporate people. But you have seen in West Bengal, in Singur and Nandigram, they shot at the farmers, not for bringing the dictatorship of the proletariat, but for bringing a capitalist Tata company in that area. Similarly, when the feminist movement became very active in India, women's liberation movement became very active inside Communist Party. There was women organization very much active in women's liberation. Then the theoreticians, including EMS, directed them. No, this is wrong. There cannot be women's liberation because the liberation should be class liberation, not a gender liberation. If you raise the slogan, women's liberation, that will divide the class unity. So that should be stopped. So they stopped that idea of women's liberation. Still, you will find in all the discourses in India on feminism or women's liberation, all these communist people are very active. Similarly, in China, there was the 996 agitation. That is, people were asked to work from 9 in the morning till 9 in the evening, 6 days in a week. That is called 996 movement. They are protest and other things, and Chinese government vehemently oppressed that movement. Still, the communist trade unions in India, they argue for workers' rights and other things. Similarly, they could establish May Day as the Labor Day, and many other people also, without knowing what is the background, they celebrate that May Day. Similarly, Women's Day also, that is also a communist agitation against the Tsar government in Russia. That also is being celebrated on March 8th. So these are all happening. Similarly, the most dangerous aspect of communist movement is they have conducted the largest massacre, genocide in the human history. They are what Stalin has done is much more than Hitler or any other people. Similarly, Pol Pot also has done, Mao has done. So these people are very much for annihilating people for their ulterior motives. This happened in India also. That we are not discussing much. When there is a widespread discussion on Gujarat riots accusing Narendra Modi, we forget to discuss about what happened in Marichapi Island in West Bengal during the Jyoti Basu regime. In 1979, about 10,000 Dalit Hindus who were the Bangladeshi refugees were massacred in Marichapi Island in West Bengal. Now, last year a book has come up, The Blood Island, written by Haldar. He has given the narrations given by the living survivors about that Marichapi. They say that about 10,000 people were annihilated there. Similarly, mainstream has come up with the statistics of political murders that happened in CPM regime. They say that nearly 55,000 people were killed during the regime with the assistance of state apparatus. Still, they accused Narendra Modi and other people. So that you can understand the propaganda machinery. They are so clever in manipulating that machinery. And the latest example also, that is about the Kerala model, Kerala government's efforts in containing the pandemic. One advantage for Kerala is it has got a high social capital. The literacy level is high, the health level is also high. That is because of many aspects, mainly because of the Hindu Renaissance movement that started from the beginning of the last century. So many social movements were responsible for such an achievement. But the communists claim it is their achievement, and they could propagate it to international media also. International media also was giving the interview of that health minister in Kerala, etc. But the tragic thing in Kerala is that even under the direct nose of all these governments, it's in Trivandrum, has to be closed down, has to be locked down. Days back it happened. That was the maximum cases were reported from that place. So if you want to have a miracle in corona control, there is one place, that is Uttar Pradesh. Under the Yogi government, they have created a miracle. Uttar Pradesh population is about 6-7 times that of Kerala. Till today, the active cases, corona cases, only about three times, less than 3 times right now, because corona has increased very much in Kerala right now. Less than. And we should understand that social capital, when compared to Kerala, is very much low in UP. The literacy level is low, and the chain of hospitals also is very less. Still, the government, because of their active intervention, they could contain the corona cases very much. This is a miracle throughout the world, because UP is the 6th largest populated place in the world. China, India, then America, Indonesia, Pakistan, and then comes UP. Still, when you look at the world ratings, the lowest will be in UP. So, but we doesn't have that type of propaganda propagating these things. But unfortunately, the leftist people are very much in propagating all these contradictions in their favor. Now, in the contemporary India, ideologically, this communism has failed, politically also failed. But how this propaganda and this thing intellectual level, they are surviving. You can say there is a Shadyantra going on. There, all those people who are fighting otherwise, they have come together in the contemporary Indian context. And their target is Sangha school of thought. That is their main target. When you look at who are the people who have come together, it is the left liberal so-called people. They are the left fascist, but they claim as left liberals. And the urban Naxals, urban Maoists, they also have come together. Then there is an evangelistic funding agencies working with crores and crores of money giving to such anti-national activities. That funding agencies, they also have joined hands with these people. Then there is the jihadi element. They also have a lot of funding sources. They have also joined together. So all these forces are now come together, and their main attack is Modi government, then Sangha Parivar. That is working very effectively with the highest professional efficiency. They are working, but they are weak. Their report says we are very weak in 3 areas. One is in labor field, where Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh is #1 organization. Then comes INDUC. Then only comes the communist and socialist trade union. Even though working class is their base, still BMS is #1 in that. So there is a nationalist trade union reigning in that area. Similarly, in the student area, ABVP is #1. There also they don't have much thing. Similarly, third area is farmers. In farmer sector also they don't have a very good all India level presence. But there are many areas where they are very strong. For example, in academia, they have got a very excellent group working with them. Then in the media also, journalists and media owners, they have got a good presence. Then in the literary, film and art section, they are also very much, their presence is very much there. Similarly, in women's movement, then Dalit movement, there also they could create some presence. Then in all these places, they are now dominating. So in many issues related to India, they create the agenda. They claim that they decide what India should think, what India should discuss. That is what they think. Now, a English newspaper which is totally leftist oriented, which is still publishing articles on supporting the China, that newspaper is now proposed for the entire all the IAS coaching centers in the country, that everybody should read that paper daily. So this is the way in which this Shadiyandra at the intellectual field is working. So this is a greatest challenge before the Sangha School of Thought. There we have seen how Trump has identified this issue in America. Trump recently, 2-3 days back, he has announced that there are radical leftist people dominating in two areas. One is there are radical left dominated universities in America. Similarly, in media also, there are many left people. They are the people responsible for the violence in many of the cities that happened during the last 1 month. And they said these universities were the epicenter of all this violent activity they are identified. So he said that the government will withdraw tax exemption to these universities. The government will not give funding to researchers taking place in this country, because it's all they are indoctrinating people for students for violence, not educating them. That is what he has said. So in that way, he said, so we will be withdrawing all these facilities that he has said. We have to be very assertive on Indian ideals, Indian ethos, and our tradition, and standing for truth. That also we have to assert. For we have to say the postmodern thinking should be in these lines. So for that part, we have to create ourselves and create a good battleground for in an intellectual and propaganda battle. With this confidence, definitely we can win, and that will be the last nail in the coffin of the communist movement in India. With these words, I conclude. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dhanyavad, Sajiji. I think it was effectively really an effective keynote. Wide sweep from Kanpur 1925 down to Trump to today. You have actually analyzed a wave and array and dimension of events in the backdrop of how communism has come up and has crashed. Some of your very key and important points that you make is actually sometimes you have said so much, it is also very difficult to absorb all of it while you are speaking. One wants to listen to your sentences again and again. But you started off with this very interesting, the most fundamental thing was that communism is ideologically dead. And it has now resorted to propaganda, and the kind of propaganda that it has resorted to. And then even in a deeper, you have touched upon the Kerala model, and you have busted the Kerala, so-called the narrative of the Kerala model, and how it has actually been grafted on a much deeper Hindu renaissance that took place, reformation that took place. You reminded us of this entire nexus and network of urban Naxals, evangelism, and jihadi forces, wherein is where the communist groups are supporting these. And you have also hit that where you have reminded us that it is in the labor field that they have absolutely gone weak completely. Even that has gone out of their hand. An ideology-less conglomerate which is only focusing on the academia, media, Dalit issues, women's issues. And you have rightly also asked us to focus on assertiveness of the Indian ethos. And I think this has been an extremely enlightening and motivating and stimulating keynote that you have delivered. And for us, especially, there are two things. You reminded us that they supported the partition resolution and Pakistan. And I want to tell our friends here that the communists, when Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee said that no, we cannot allow the whole of Bengal to go to Pakistan, we want partition of Bengal. The communists had said, yes, we don't want partition of Bengal. We want Bengal to remain united, but we want it to go to Pakistan. So you also reminded us of Mookerjee. I don't know whether Deep Haldar has joined. Usually he joins us. You reminded us of Mookerjee, and I'm glad that 40 years after Mookerjee, that narrative is again coming up on the surface. Thank you so much for such a enlightening and inspiring keynote. We are extremely grateful.
Uh, Saji Narayan ji has spoken almost every topic and contemporary and universal topics, including communism outside India, and like that.
And if Saji Narayan ji has any concluding remarks that you would like us to share, or any kind of any direction that you would like us to really take this forward in, then I would request him to give his concluding remarks.
And Dr. Balakrishna also has very excellently, he has mentioned the historical aspect of the communist failure in India. Now, what we require in the contemporary India, what we require is, there are certain islands where they are still remaining. How communist is now indulging in breaking India, that activity. So that needs to be in-depth studied. There should be some program on that also. Let us very be vocal on certain things. We need not be shy about all those things. We have to be very in a propagandistic way itself. We have to do this. Similarly, what is the alternate? The new India-centric paradigm now slowly evolving in the country. This is for the first time. After Mahatma Gandhi ji has said Swadeshi, this Atmanirbhar Bharat is a new direction, change of direction. It's a paradigm shift in our this thing. On a fine morning, you cannot expect everything to change, but it's a very excellent beginning, and how to bring Indian ethos, India-centric elements in all our national activities. That should be center of all our future discussions. So I think a foundation can take up that also, one by one issues. We will identify which are the areas we have to discuss, and that will be a good thing. That will be for the national development also. That will contribute much. This word I conclude. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think this is a very clear direction that we have received. Extremely clear. And I think my friends in West Bengal, my elders, I see a number of our senior professors also have joined. Professor Devashish Biswas, Professor Arijit Bhattacharya, and all are there. And I think they have had a long experience in this, and they have heard you. They have heard Professor Balakrishnan, and especially the last these concluding remarks by Saji Narayan ji. And I'm sure we are organizing ourselves, and we need to identify these areas and work along those lines as well, being vocal. And Shri Saji ji has brought in he has mentioned Atmanirbhar Bharat. I think in one word we can say the communist ideology, the communist movement, the communist parties are such, they have never wanted India to be Atmanirbhar. Their entire ideological position and politics has been to make India, what Sitaram Goelji has famously said, a satellite nation, a dependent nation. And I think we have broken through that barrier. What needs to be is to identify the breaking India activities that they continue to indulge in. Thank you so much. I would like to thank our very distinguished speakers for giving us so much time. Saji ji is the president of the largest labor organization and movement in the country, and yet he's given us nearly about 2 hours for this wonderful evening.